back to the Rangers News YouTube channel. My name's James Black and I'm joined once again by Jordan Carlisle, and we're going to have a look back at Thursday's Europa League win over Galatasaray, the group stage draw which came yesterday, and then just a little bit on to Sunday's game with Ross County at Ibrox in the Scottish Premiership. But the main thing we're here, Europa League game, draw. Jordan, what was your initial thoughts just on the game itself against Galatasaray on Thursday night?
Yeah, I think beforehand I was relatively confident that Rangers could get a result. Just in terms of, obviously it was bigged up before the game as more of a test than any of Jared's sides have had so far in the competition. And I think with the names and the opposition, that was, fair enough with Belhanda and Falcao and the like, some real dangerous attacking players. But I think the first half was, they sort of felt each other out a little bit. But Rangers took a bit of confidence into the break clearly, and after that they were brilliant and well worth it, well worth their win. Obviously the goal at the end made things a bit nervy, but we've talked about clean sheet records and stuff on here before, and you're not going to have that runs like that for the entire season. Obviously it's slipped now, and at the end of the day the goal at the end doesn't really matter a great deal. I thought the first one was so well worked, lovely, like incisive playing around the box, and I think we maybe talked about it after the Hibs game. The Rangers started nicely there, and then faded away. But it's that sort of stuff. See, when Arfield gets in those sort of advanced positions and lays the ball off to players, it was him on the end of it this time. But the real players in there that are capable of nice link up, and often it comes from Tav playing that fizzed pass into the middle and players running off it. But lovely, really well worked first goal, and then Tav with 7 and 7. Obviously the video has been doing the rounds afterwards, basically him starting the move himself near his own corner flag and getting up there where Morelos, the 20 million rated striker, is hanging back. It's the right back who's there at the back post, with his Ronaldo-esque leap and sticking it in the corner. And I think, Galatasaray struggled to deal with that sort of overload and the fullback's ability to get forward, fullback to fullback, after a nice flowing move. So, no, it's a really good achievement. I think, Jared spoke about how it's all about trophies in May, and there's plenty of truth in that, but obviously financially it's important, and in terms of prestige with the club getting back on the map, the results in recent times, Galatasaray, Feyenoord, Porto, Braga, all those results in the last couple of years are really going to be raising Rangers' profile again. And there were no, this proved as well that it's not just the fans getting the team over the line, they've got the players to do it as well. So yeah, really impressive result.
There was a couple of changes to the starting 11 from the weekend route from Motherwell. Borna Barisic and Yanis Hadji both coming back into the side for Calvin Bassey and Jordan Jones. And I think most people would have agreed with those changes before the game. Do you think that was the right selection?
Yeah, I think we got the predicted 11 right again. I think went down that route. That there were two. Barisic obviously was one that Bassey was simply coming in to give him a rest and to give him his first experience in the Premiership. So that was expected. Hadji, Jones did really well, and I think a few people were disappointed that he was left out. But different type of game, and Hadji's the big signing. It was the first signing of the summer coming in because of basically what he did in the Europa League last season. And with his links to the club with his dad and being born in Istanbul, it was a big game for him. So it was likely that he would come in, and I think he wasn't the hero like he was against Braga, but he showed some lovely touches, and he just does seem to, he just seems to thrive in that environment, doesn't he? He loves those night games against a big opposition, and you say that obviously he's maybe struggled a bit at times in the league when he's been put under a lot of pressure and it's a bit more physical. You wouldn't say that in the games against Braga and Galatasaray he's not been put under pressure, he's not been hired by defenders, because there's quality players in the opposition, but he just seems to really raise it. And just lovely, just really technically nice, and dropping off and picking up spaces, and and passing and moving. I thought he was brilliant. So yeah, a different type of game needed a different type of player in that position, and he did really well.
It's a really interesting thing somebody pointed out on Twitter, I believe, about Hadji, and it took me by surprise to read it. But it actually makes a lot of sense when people talk about kind of how he can be a bit inconsistent and he'll struggle for some one game to the next. He's younger than both Ross and Robbie McCrory.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah,
I mean that to me that was just an incredible just that we. It just gives you that wee bit of insight as to why he is going to be inconsistent and why, you know, as much as he's someone that Rangers do rely on in big moments, he's maybe not going to be somebody who's going to do it every single week for you. And yeah, he's still very much a young player, just finding his feet, making his way in the game. But yeah, I thought it was brilliant. Scott Arfield for me was fantastic on Thursday night. He's one player who, kind of with the injuries that Rangers have had in the last few weeks, Scott Arfield has taken his chance, and he deserves to keep his place in the squad. On the starting 11, sorry, when Ryan Jack's fit, when Joe Aribo's fit. You can't drop him just now.
Yeah, it's interesting that I think I said before on here, he's a guy since he's joined the club. You wouldn't say he's in the strongest 11 or he's at a nailed on place in the strongest 11. You know, at any real stretch of that, he played consistently at the start of last season in that advanced role, but he's so much better starting in midfield and moving forward from there and then joining the attacks rather than playing with his back to goal and trying to feed in strikers and other runners. He has been brilliant. He's just a bit different, isn't he, than, you know, your Kamaras and your Davises. I'm a massive fan of Davis, and but they're just different players, and he gives you that drive forward, and he does pick up spaces. He's a big enough guy, kind of physical, but he seems to drift into space as well, you know, and spot gaps, and he's got good vision. Sometimes his finishing is, you know, he's a bit tame with his finishing sometimes, and that obviously raised his head against Hibs with a couple of misses or a couple of saves from Marciano at the end, but lovely outside of foot to tuck it away against Galatasaray. And yeah, he's been absolutely brilliant recently. So it's, you know, you would say if, you know, it's Jack Davis and Aribo, or Jack Kamara and Aribo previously, but Arfield's going to fit in there somewhere, I think, when the two of them come back.
Now, Rangers dominated the opening spell against Galatasaray and kind of let the Turkish side back into it towards half time. But when the sides went in at 0-0, did you start to kind of have a wee worry that it's maybe not going to be Rangers night and this could have been it, or did you still have that confidence that they were going to see the game out and go on and get through to the group stage?
Well, I think with the European games, it's always a case of, you know, if the other team has a lot of individual quality or has been on a good run, I think the first half's a good barometer for that. So as you say, like, both teams had chances and periods in the first half, but the fact that it went in at 0 each, I always feel that the danger is going 2 or 3 down in the first half, the individual brilliance or a side who are really up for it, which was sort of the case against Braga last year when they just looked a better team until Rangers obviously staged the late comeback. But I think once you get through to half time, yes, you know, it's not going ideally. But at that point, you then have the belief to know that, oh, actually, like, we can certainly beat these guys when we go out in the second half if we pick up our standards and do things a little bit better, which I think is what Jared essentially said that he said in the change room, wanted to play a bit quicker and have a bit more end product to the nice passing. So no, I think the game was certainly in the balance. I wouldn't say that it was clear that Rangers were going to come out and take the game by the scruff of the neck, but certainly the confidence hadn't waned, and if anything, you know, it was sort of clear that Galatasaray didn't have a huge amount to be fearful of if Rangers kept defending strongly.
I mean, one of the big things that jumped out for me was, I think it was 10 minutes in before Falcao even got a touch of the ball, and it came in his edge of his own 6-yard box. And that, to me, that spoke volumes as to how dominant Rangers were in the early part of the first half. And then the second half, they came out, started just as brightly, and it took 7 minutes after the restart for the first goal to come. 7 minutes after that, the second one comes. The two goals were fantastic. I know we spoke about them a little bit earlier on, but they were two really good team goals.
Yeah, it was proper play, proper football, and I think actually that was probably the most impressive period of the game for me from Rangers was after that first goal, because they just looked all over Galatasaray. Like the speed of the play and the confidence was clearly up, and and then that's proven by the you're playing in a European game at home against big opposition. You're 1-0 up, but McGregor's still pulling the centre backs close to take the wee short restart, short goal kick, and then he's giving it to Tav. Tav's playing that, which on another day I think it speaks volumes for him as well, because he knows now he's not naive to the amount of criticism he'll get if he gives the ball away in his own half. Same with the likes of Goldson, Hollander, anyone. If they give the ball away in their own half and they concede a goal in that position, then they're in trouble. But he's pinging a real fizzed pass over 30 yards forward to try and initiate something, get a bit of speed into it. But once he plays the pass, he's off.
Yeah.
Because his end goal, unlike any normal fullback, is to actually get on the end of the move. So, Arfield took the goal brilliantly. It was really well worked, first one. And then the second one, obviously, Ali McCoy's is going crazy over it on commentary, and rightly so, because it was lovely. I think it even surprised him, sort of the quality of the build-up play. Obviously, the cross takes a bit of a deflection, but Tav was there, right place in the right time, and there's three defenders sort of standing looking at each other while they get up and won the header. So I think Rangers just wanted it more, and that's sort of been a theme in European games, that other teams have come and maybe not fancied it a huge amount, or they've dipped their toe in early on, and when they haven't got the rewards, then Rangers have come back at them and showed that bit more desire. So yeah, I think they've really deserved to be in the group stages, and yeah, we'll come on to the draw at the minute, but things are promising.
Just the last kind of thing about the game itself, I wanted to mention, actually, the two, was after the second goal, how impressed were you just by how much Rangers continued to attack? It's been one of the big criticisms of this Rangers team in particular, but it does go back a bit further than when Gerrard was in charge, before Gerrard was in charge, and that sometimes they would go a goal up and just take their foot off the gas, invite the other team onto them, and kind of take unnecessary risks. But on Thursday night, and the Motherwell game as well before that, and maybe the couple, 2-3 games prior to that, they've looked ruthless. Going forward, they're always kind of hunting forward in packs. They're not content with a 1-goal lead, a 2-goal lead, sometimes even a 3-goal lead. They're always looking for more. And it was something that really impressed me in Thursday night. Was it something that kind of stood out for you?
Yeah, well, I think you can see it either way. If it's a European game and you say that, if you sit back, you invite pressure, and that's an unnecessary risk, but it is also an unnecessary risk, bombing the fullbacks forward when you're 2-0 up with 20 minutes to go. That could have backfired, but it does just show the level of confidence that the players and the coaching staff have, that, they're not changing it and bringing on another centre back and really shutting up shop. At that point, it's sort of I think the brand that Rangers want to play, and we've heard a lot of that talk sort of from academy upwards about how we're wanting to see some sort of brand, a clear brand emerging at the club over this year and sort of the years to come. And I think they're showing that. Jared's spoken about how it'd be naive if they didn't use the individual quality of the fullbacks. So yeah, going for more goals at that point, it's more, probably less a tactical decision than just a feeling from the players that they were very much on top, and there wasn't a huge amount of risk in the game. Obviously that changes after their goal, which was pretty preventable in itself. But I think it just shows the positivity and the fact that once again, that like Rangers aren't surprised when they're scoring goals against big teams and they fancy themselves to get plenty every time they play.
No, just the final thing about the game was this is celebrations at the final whistle. Obviously, it was a big game. It meant a lot to get through the group stages, but even throughout the game, like Alfredo Morelos, you seen it, Scott Arfield's goal. he was loving life, mate. Absolutely loving life. Gerrard, we've all seen the pictures on social media. Gerrard going crazy at the final whistle. There's Tavernier and Defoe on the pitch at the final whistle. It's fantastic. And yeah, it was just one of these things that really jumped out for me at the end. It was just you could see how much this means for the players to get through the group stages for a third successive season.
Yeah, I think from a player's point of view, when you take everything isolated, and I think for a lot of fans, it's the league this year. It's winning the league, it's getting some cup success, and a lot of people are sort of not overly bothered about the European run. I think that changes when you see the team playing well and beating big teams. Like obviously, people are going to get are going to rally around that. But for the players, I think the celebrations and stuff, and for Gerrard and his own prestige, that's why a lot of the players have come to the club. So Kemar Roof and Joe Aribo. I think Aribo particularly, he had plenty of options when he was, running down at Charlton, and these are the sorts of things that those guys are coming up for. Jermaine Defoe as well, late on in his career, obviously he's one celebrating. He didn't get on the pitch, but it's still great for him at the back end of his career to be playing European football. And I think that means a lot to players. That's the excitement factor. That it's a long slog if they're going to win the league, and I'm sure they're focused on that across the season. But it's a lot more exciting. The prospect of going away to a new stadium to play against Benfica than it is, to maybe go to St Johnstone on a Sunday. No disrespect to St Johnstone, but that's just the way it is from a player's mentality. So I think they're particularly delighted, maybe more so than the fans, to get through, and it gives a real edge to the middle part of the season for them, and that sort of Thursday, Sunday, and the constant fixtures to get a buzz around. But yeah, good scenes at the end.
So yeah, which takes us on to the draw. So yesterday in Switzerland to Giro Ferrara, and that's a good draw. That Rangers have got Standard Liège, Lech Poznan, and Benfica. Is that a group you can get through?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's obviously dangerous to get overconfident, and yes, the crowd's been a big factor for Rangers before, and yes, the league has got to be the priority. But that when you see some of the other names, in the groups and teams in Pop Four like Lille and Nice, that have been avoided. There's other teams in there like Hamonia, Nicosia, and Dundalk and stuff, which you could have got, which are better draws. But across the board, that's good. I think Porto won the league in Portugal last season, who Rangers beat in the group stages. So they finished, I think, 5 or 6 points clear of Benfica. They're, the top team in the group. So there's no reason why Rangers can't beat them, especially at home. And then Standard Liège, Club Brugge, I think, won the Belgian league by some distance last year. And Standard Liège were one of the teams sort of 4th, 5th, 6th, fighting out, on a similar number of points. Not an outstanding season by any stretch. And then Lech Poznan, I think the Polish league is hardly sort of vaunted as being a great standard. They had a big target man whose name I can't pronounce, from Denmark last season. They got 24 goals, but he left to go and play in Italy over the summer. So they have a guy who's obviously got them in that position with his goals, but he's no longer there. So I think it's a fantastic draw, and it's interesting to see. I think Tav spoke before the draw on Thursday night about wanting to get the big guns, and that's sort of what the players are getting themselves up for. And to an extent, some of the players might be disappointed with that, although Benfica obviously have a rich European history, so they have a big tie against Benfica, and then ones that Rangers will go into as favourites. I think there's no two ways about that. So they managed to get through last season from a much tougher group on paper, and there's absolutely no reason why they can't get through this year.
The kind of consensus on social media after the draw was made is this is very much a group Rangers can progress from. So if we're kind of looking at it as a group that we can get out of, the next question then should really be: is it a group Rangers can win?
Yeah, I think so.
I,
Pardon?
I think so. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I do. I think it's very much one that is very much a winnable group. I mean, look, I've got the fixtures in front of me here. So you've got it's away to Standard Liège, home to Lech Poznan, away to Benfica, home to Benfica, home to Standard Liège, and then away to Lech Poznan. So 2 of the last 3 games in the group are at Ibrox, which alright, you're almost certainly not going to have fans in, but there is still that advantage of kind of just having. It's your territory. You're not. It's a climate you're accustomed to. I mean, going away to Portugal, it's not going to be scorching hot, but it's still going to be much warmer in Lisbon on the 5th of November than it is in the south side of Glasgow.
Yeah,
So
that's a
you
fair
don't have
assumption.
the kind of wee home comforts. But I really think that is a group that Rangers can seriously look at winning.
Ideally, maybe the fixtures being the other way around. I think maybe get the points on the board early doors. As Poznan, I think they have started their season with a win, 2 draws, and a defeat as well. So it hardly looks like they're going to run away with things domestically either. So yeah, maybe the other way around would have been ideal. But again, it's maybe a situation where Rangers can get themselves in a good position with 2 of the 3 away games in the first 3 games. And then they'll know what they have to do, as you say, when they get back to those home comforts. But yeah, and I think we were looking at financially as well. We were looking at it yesterday, the numbers involved. So Rangers have got over 4 million already for their 2020-21 campaign, which seems weird considering that the previous one only ended a couple of months ago against Bayer
It's
Leverkusen.
prize money, isn't it?
Yeah, so like that's positive, and it's just under 3 million euros to qualify for the group stages, which is a good boost. But when you're looking at those winnable games, it's also nearly 600,000 euros for each win in the groups, and then a big boost when you get out of it. So financially for the club, it's there as well. It's about the pride and stuff and the progression, and seeing if you can take it even further than the last 16 what you got to last year. But there's plenty of winnable games in there, plenty of prize money up for grabs, and if that goes well, it could be more arrivals in January.
Well, we've still got a couple of days until the transfer window closes. Gerrard's spoken fairly consistently. He's wanting to get a centre midfielder in before the window closes.
Yeah.
I mean, I think on paper at least the start 11 is as good as any in that group. Is there a pressing need to go out and get somebody in before Monday? Or assuming that everyone can stay fit, which has been a hell of a task so far this season, but if everybody can stay fit, do Rangers need to go out and add more bodies before Monday? Bearing in mind that with the UEFA squads regulations and whatnot, anybody that comes in will need to take the place of somebody that's already in the squad. So it's not a case of having both available. If you bring a midfielder in, you're going to have to lose Joe Aribo or Scott Arfield or Glenn Kamara, or it's not the case that we have these spots available within the squad itself.
Does that apply though? Could someone like a Brandon Barker, who was brought in the last one, could he drop out?
A Brandon Barker could come out, but I mean you're only looking at, assuming, I don't know if anybody's going to leave before Monday. I think there's been lots of talk about players moving on, but everyone that has moved on so far has been, like your Lewis Mayles, your Kieran Wright, your academy players who aren't taking up spaces in the UEFA A player list anyway. So that only leaves you Barker, Jordan Jones. There's not really much else in the way of kind of flotsam and jetsam in the A list, because it's only 21 players, I suppose. But
yeah, but whether you can also maybe drop out like if you have 4 centre backs in that squad, you maybe drop one of them out in Edmonton, something like that.
You're going to have the possession with this squad will do you for the whole group stage. So if you decide to do that, before game one. By the time we get to Benfica, a month later, you might well be needing that
Yeah.
centre back, and Gerrard has been very adamant, and he's a 1-2 player for every position. So, and we dropped out the third goalkeeper.
Yeah, that certainly makes sense, and it's different than as it's been so far. You can change stuff on a game by game basis. I'd say though the more pressing transfer need and is not necessarily for the Europa League games, but for the league and the sake of mounting a challenge across the whole season. Because all those players,
could that wait until January and you've got a better idea of what you've banked from the Europa League, and you can then splash out a bit more and make that big sign that's going to get you over that hump in January? Because January's been where the season's typically fallen apart.
It has been, yeah. I think the scary thing for a lot of fans though will be that how will things go between now and January if you don't sign anyone. I think based on what Jared's saying, it sounds as if he has a target who is, it is possible that they could sign him before Monday. So I think he wants to make that change. It's the Hibs and more pressingly the Livingston games that is really the problem and has been the problem for the supporters. When you bring in everyone in that midfield has risen to the occasion in Europa League games, and you have your Glenn Kamara who you don't need against Livingston away, who's quite passive and side to side with his possession. But when he plays in the Europa League, he really ups it and looks classy because his role changes when there's more defensive duty to come. But I do think Rangers need someone who's going to be able to press forward and break through the lines, and someone who, when it comes to playing Celtic in the key Old Firm games that are going to come, if it's going to be tight this season, is maybe someone who can really get the foot in and get about them in the middle of the pitch. Besic has obviously been a guy who's been linked in the last couple of days, and I haven't seen a huge amount of him recently. But in the games I've seen him in before, he's highly combative in the middle and just loves to get the foot in and fly in. I think there's Everton fans saying that if he goes up there, he'll definitely get sent off in the Old Firm, which is obviously not weird after that set Jordan Jones back quite a way in his Rangers career. But yeah, I don't know if he's the right signing because, again, he's not going to offer much in the final third. He's never scored in the Premier League. He's not the guy who's going to cover the back four and then create the chances at the other end. But it'll be interesting to see if they go for someone. But I think going for someone would be more based on sort of the will to get in a good position and to make sure you're in a good position to try and win the league rather than for the Europa League. And Gerrard would rather have that player now than January.
Magic. Now, just to bring things a little bit closer to home, it is Rangers Ross County tomorrow at Ibrox in the Premiership. Now, Gerrard mentioned at his press conference yesterday they might make a couple of changes. They likely won't make wholesale changes to the side. Now, I done a predicted 11 on the site earlier on today, and I've gone just for two, with Ryan Jack coming into the starting 11 for Stephen Davis, just with internationals coming up, and Liam Balogun coming in for Phil Helander. The Helander's a kind of odd one. For me, he's pretty much undroppable just now based on form. But I think with the Old Firm game coming up, this is going to be the last fixture before that. It's just a case of getting some minutes in the legs for Balogun and for Jack, who I think he'll maybe get 60 minutes out of Jack before he goes into international duty. Maybe similar to Balogun, it might give him the full game. But I think it's that kind of fixture where at Ibrox, it's Ross County at home. If you can't afford to make changes in this game, when can you?
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Certainly Jack and for Davis, mainly because he's obviously played a lot of minutes recently, and Northern Ireland playing 3 games. He's got a real congested period ahead of him, and I think the main balancing act with Davis has been getting him enough minutes to keep him taking over and not overdoing him and seeing him pick up an injury. So at this point, it makes sense, to bring him out. Jack can come in and try and play in a similar way in terms of the shape of the team. Yeah, Hollander, interesting. Yeah, he was excellent on Thursday night. Again, has been playing plenty of minutes. Balogun, the fact that he came on against Motherwell obviously shows that Jared wants to get some sort of game time into him. I thought he looked really rusty when he came on. Passed the ball out of play once or twice, and was muscled off the ball. Went under not a great amount, or there wasn't a great amount of threat. He looked a bit rusty, so yeah, Ross County could be a game where, in theory, the defence shouldn't be stretched too much, and as a Nigeria international, he should be up to it, come what may. So yeah, I would probably agree with those two changes. Yeah, maybe Jones as well. It's an interesting one though, because he's a guy who's going to thrive playing in space, and he may not necessarily he'll get space and time on the ball, but not space in behind, which is what he's probably really after. So I wouldn't put it past Jared to play him, and to take Hadji out as well, and just rotate those two, because it's a bit of a blow for Jones's confidence probably to do really well, then come out of the team for 2 games. So it'd be interesting to see how he plays that. But yeah, a couple of changes just to freshen it up, to keep people sort of wrapped up and protected. But yeah, that sounds decent to me.
I mean, kind of, what's your thoughts on the game itself? Ross County's had a really good start to the season, but a little kind of dip recently. But the Staggies have been playing some really good stuff under Stuart Kettlewell. They're largely been grinding out results, but it should come for the 3 points, surely, yeah.
Yeah, surely is obviously the operative word. It's the same as most games at home, against teams that are sort of out of that maybe top 4 in the country. It's a case of Rangers trying to impose the way they want to play. An early goal is important just to settle the nerves and stuff, but I think it would be a major surprise. Sometimes you will have sort of feelings going into games, and the way things have been for a while is, think a slip up might be on the horizon, or players have been overworked. But I think with this Rangers team, it is rare, other than that horrendous period after the winter break last year, that there's consistent bad results. There has been plenty of bad results, but there's often a real wake up. They serve as a real wake up call, and they come back at it in the weeks afterwards. Hibs was that drop point, and since then we've had big wins, 3 big wins. So I can't see, with the international break coming, I think everyone should be pretty focused, because the end is in sight, and then they can sort of take the foot off, and half the squad will go away, and the other half will have a few days off. But that'll be soured massively if they don't get the 3 points. So Ross County, will be maybe tough to break down initially, but again, Rangers just have the superior players, and with people coming back to fitness and a few more guys available, Jared has the options to mix things up off the bench as well if things aren't going to plan, and should be a comfortable win.
Magic. So put you on the spot just to finish up. Score prediction then?
I'm going 4-0.
4-0, okay, nice. I don't think it'll be too far off it. Comfortable 3-0 win for Rangers for me. So
yeah, happy with that.
That'll do me nicely. You're going to international break, a nice comfortable one. But that's all we've got time for this episode. So remember to like and subscribe. Have a look through our previous videos, and thanks for watching. See you next time.
Cheers.